What if unlocking your brain's hidden potential wasn't about radical change, but about a microscopic shift? In the quiet unfolding of the Psilocybin Paradox, we find ourselves drawn into a realm where imperceptible doses of this ancient compound, derived from certain mushrooms, gently coax the intricate webs of neural architecture toward unforeseen reconfiguration, subtly reshaping the contours of perception without the tumult of full hallucinogenic immersion. Microdosing psilocybin, typically 1/10 to 1/20th of a recreational dose, taken intermittently, has emerged not merely as a fringe curiosity, but as a phenomenon quietly permeating the lives of those seeking enhanced clarity, creativity, and emotional equilibrium, prompting scientists to peer deeper into its paradoxical power. How such minimal intervention can evoke profound, enduring shifts in the mind's vast, interconnected landscape. Before we move on, if you like learning this way, you can quietly hit subscribe so you don't lose this channel later. Imagine the brain as a luminous city at dusk. Its neighborhoods, those specialized networks honed by evolution for survival, humming in orchestrated isolation, each tending to its domain of thought, memory, and sensation. Psilocybin, once metabolized into its active form psilocin, slips into this metropolis like a soft fog, binding primarily to serotonin 2, receptors scattered across the cortical expanse, particularly in the prefrontal cortex and deeper structures, where it acts as a partial agonist, nudging pyramidal neurons and thalamocortical afferents toward heightened glutamate release. This interaction does not overwhelm, but whispers, altering the rhythmic dance of oscillations, theta waves slowing in posterior regions while high gamma surges forward, disrupting the precise phase-amplitude coupling that maintains local synchrony, thereby loosening the rigid boundaries between disparate brain territories. At the heart of this reconfiguration lies the default mode network, DMN, that introspective consortium of medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate, and angular gyrus, which governs self-referential rumination and the ego's narrative continuity. Under psilocybin's influence, even in microdoses extrapolated from higher dose models, DMN integrity frays, its temporal coherence diminishes, allowing frontal high gamma networks to expand and posterior theta densities to reorganize in nonlinear, dose-dependent waves. What emerges is not chaos, but a liberated crosstalk. Segregated modules, visual, attentional, executive, begin to converse across the divide, their functional connectivity broadening like rivers merging after a gentle rain, fostering a multiscale rewiring that hints at the paradox's core, minimal input yielding expansive neural dialogue. This unplugged symphony of networks manifests subtly in the microdoser's day-to-day reality, where the world sharpens without fracturing. Reports from naturalistic studies reveal enhanced mood and mental health metrics after roughly 30 days, with reductions in depression, anxiety, and stress scores, moderate depressions easing toward mild, alongside anecdotal surges in creative fluency and originality, as divergent thinking flourishes in the subacute glow following ingestion. Sensory perception, once filtered through the DMN's habitual lens, blooms into richer hues. Colors deepen, patterns in nature reveal themselves with newfound poignancy, and emotional undercurrents flow with greater regulation, as if the brain's perceptual playground has been repainted with broader strokes, inviting a more immersive engagement with the environment. Yet this is no mere fleeting uplift. Emerging evidence from precision, functional mapping tracks desynchronization, persisting weeks post-exposure, with anterior hippocampus DMN links waning, suggesting the groundwork for lasting perceptual reconfiguration. In this gentle reconfiguration, the psilocybin paradox reveals itself as a bridge between the ephemeral and the enduring, where tiny doses quietly orchestrate a mind more fluid, perceptive, and alive. As the neural symphony quiets into a sustained resonance, the true depth of the psilocybin paradox begins to reveal itself in the brain's capacity for metamorphosis, where fleeting chemical whispers precipitate enduring architectural renewal through the elegant machinery of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, that profound adaptability woven into the fabric of neural tissue, manifests not only in the sprouting of new dendritic spines or the fortification of synaptic junctions, but in the wholesale reconfiguration of cortical maps, allowing once rigid pathways to yield to novel traversals. Much like ancient riverbeds carving fresh courses through yielding earth under persistent, subtle pressure. In microdosing regimens, where psilocybin metabolite engages serotonin 2A receptors with measured restraint, preclinical models illuminate a cascade commencing with heightened glutamate signaling and BDNF expression, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the gardener of neuronal growth, spurring spinogenesis in layer V pyramidal cells of the prefrontal cortex, observable as a 10% density increase persisting up to a month post-administration in rodent analogs, hinting at translational potential for human microdosing, where analogous structural echoes may underpin reported cognitive enhancements. Before we go deeper, if this calm pace feels good, consider subscribing so more chill science waits for you when you need it. This is no ephemeral perturbation. Functional MRI tracings from higher dose paradigms, scaled to microdosing contexts via pharmacokinetic modeling, depict sustained desynchronization of the DMN with bolstered connectivity in the task-positive network, fostering a plasticity window wherein habitual thought loops dissolve, permitting the emergence of innovative neural ensembles that redefine problem-solving fluency and creative ideation over weeks of intermittent dosing. Delve deeper into this rewiring, and one encounters the paradox's most tantalizing facet, the formation of de novo pathways transcending mere modulation of extant circuits, as if the brain, long constrained by its own evolutionary scaffolding, awakens to sculpt fresh conduits for perception and cognition. Studies tracking microdosers longitudinally note not just acute mood elevations, depression scores plummeting by 18% on average after 45 days, but persistent gains in emotional granularity, where individuals discern and navigate affective nuances with a precision once veiled by DMN dominance, corroborated by upregulated 5-HT2, a mediated signaling that promotes hippocampal neurogenesis, subtly expanding the neural repertoire for resilience against anxiety's encroaching shadows. Yet sustainability remains the crucible question. For while animal data affirm dendritic stability and synaptic proteome remodeling enduring beyond dosing cessation, human evidence, gleaned from observational cohorts and nascent RCTS, suggests these changes hinge on regimen fidelity, with benefits waning sans maintenance, yet potentially compounding into lasting trait-level shifts in openness and mindfulness, as Big Five personality metrics subtly ascend over months. Herein lies the quiet drama. Microdosing as a neurochemical chisel, delicately etching permanence into the brain's fluid clay, challenging notions of fixity in mental architecture, and inviting contemplation of whether such reconfiguration truly bestows adaptive advantage or merely unveils latent potentials long dormant within. This perceptual playground, thus rewired, extends its tendrils into the microdoser's lived world, where reality itself acquires a luminous patina, sounds harmonize with unaccustomed depth, ideas cascade in unbidden originality, and interpersonal exchanges brim with empathic acuity, all without the veil-lifting intensity of macrodoses. Emerging from this reconfiguration is a mind more pliant, attuned to the subtle symphonies of existence, where the Psilocybin Paradox whispers that true transformation often arrives not in thunderclaps, but in the persistent murmur of microscopic grace, reshaping the self one synapse at a time. In the shadowed corridors of ethical deliberation and the burgeoning laboratories of clinical inquiry, the Psilocybin Paradox confronts us with a horizon both luminous and labyrinthine, where the promise of neural reconfiguration must be tempered by the solemn imperatives of responsible stewardship over the mind's delicate sovereignty. As microdosing permeates creative enclaves, executive suites, and therapeutic sanctuaries alike. Ethicists grapple with the specter of self-medication in a regulatory vacuum, where anecdotal allure outpaces empirical rigor, potentially ensnaring vulnerable seekers in cycles of unsubstantiated expectation or unforeseen adverse trajectories, mood destabilization, cardiovascular whispers, or the insidious creep of dependency masked as enhancement. The clarion call echoes from institutional bodies like the TGA in Australia and the FDA's breakthrough designations. Large-scale, double-blind RCTs remain perilously scarce for microdosing protocols, with ongoing trials such as NCT 0525-9943 probing mood trajectories and NCT 07063862 assaying daily functioning in depression cohorts, yet plagued by challenges in blinding the unmistakable perceptual afterglow and sourcing pharmaceutical-grade psilocybin amid Schedule I entanglements. Before we go further, if you enjoy slow, quiet explanations, subscribing makes it easier to find chill science next time. Herein resides the paradox's ethical crux, not merely efficacy, but equity. Ensuring access transcends socioeconomic strata, mitigating risks for those with latent psychoses, where 5-HT2 agonism might unmoor fragile equilibria, and safeguarding informed consent amid the hype's seductive murmur, all while honoring indigenous traditions from which psilocybin springs, such as Mazatic rituals venerating its sacramental essence. Navigating this terrain demands a recalibration of the legal landscape, once rigidly prohibitive, now yielding to therapeutic apertures in jurisdictions like Oregon's Measure 109 and Australia's 2023TG, a authorization for psychiatrist-prescribed psilocybin in treatment-resistant depression, signaling a paradigm shift from criminalization to compassionate calibration. Legislative evolution mirrors neuroscientific momentum. Psilocybin's FD, a orphan drug status for cluster headaches and phase Roman III trials for major depression, underscore its transition from countercultural relic to clinical contender, with microdosing poised as a prophylactic adjunct, intermittent, low burden, potentially revolutionizing mental health's pharmacological armamentarium. Yet prudence prevails. The Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists cautions against off-label proliferation, absent longitudinal safety data, emphasizing multidisciplinary oversight to harness neuroplastic dividends without courting peril, as preclinical synergies with SSRIs hint at amplified BDNF cascades, but human pharmacokinetics remain opaque for sub-perceptual regimens. As these threads converge, the psilocybin paradox beckons us toward a redefined consciousness, where microscopic interventions illuminate the fluidity of selfhood, challenging materialist dogmas with empirical intimations of expanded perceptual bandwidths. Synesthesia light, temporal dilation, ego dissolution's faint echo, potentially recasting mental health not as deficit repair, but as latent capacity amplification. For the future of the mind, this invites a collective odyssey, funding robust trials to map dose-response curves across demographics, integrating neuroimaging with subjective phenomenology to decode how DMN desynchronization begets resilience, and fostering dialogues that honor science's rigor alongside experiential wisdom. In this contemplative expanse, microdosing emerges not as panacea, but as provocative portal, urging humanity to explore the neural cosmos with measured wonder, reshaping our grasp of well-being in an era where the brain's hidden symphonies await orchestration by the subtlest of keys. With the ethical scaffolding tentatively erected and legal pathways tentatively illuminated, the psilocybin paradox invites a deeper immersion into the perceptual alchemy it engenders, where the microdoser's world transmutes from monochrome routine into a tapestry woven with heightened chromatic and emotional threads. Each sensory encounter enriched by the subtle neural crosstalk that blurs the boundaries of isolated experience. Envision the everyday commute through Brisbane's sun-dappled streets, where ordinarily muted eucalyptus scents sharpen into symphonic clarity, their volatile compounds, eucalyptol and pinene, now registering with an almost tactile profundity. As psilocybin's desynchronization of the DMN loosens the perceptual filters imposed by habitual self-narratives, permitting visual cortices to entwine with limbic hubs in unaccustomed harmony, yielding reports of amplified aesthetic appreciation and a profounder sense of presence amid the ordinary. This playground of perception extends to cognitive realms, where microdosers chronicle surges in problem-solving elegance, mathematical conundrums unraveling with lateral leaps, artistic blocks dissolving into fluid ideation, as enhanced global brain integration fosters divergent thinking, evidenced by convergent creativity tasks showing 20 to 30% uplifts in originality scores subacutely post-ingestion. Before we go deeper, if this calm pace feels good, consider subscribing so more chill science waits for you when you need it. All while emotional regulation steadies the inner seas, transforming reactive tempests into navigable swells through upregulated prefrontal amygdala reciprocity. Yet beyond these acute flourishes lies the profounder terrain of neuroplastic reconfiguration, where the paradox's longevity unfolds in the brain's silent forges, sculpting not transient sparks, but enduring architectures capable of sustaining elevated states of well-being. Preclinical cascades reveal psilocin igniting TRK-B signaling via BDNF upregulation in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortices, precipitating dendritic arborization and spinogenesis that persist weeks beyond metabolic clearance, paralleled in human SPECT imaging by sustained increases in cortical serotonin transporter binding and fMRI signatures of fortified frontoparietal networks, suggesting microdosing regimens every third day, say, might consolidate these changes into trait-like resilience against depressive inertia. Longitudinal microdosing surveys, tracking cohorts over 12 months, illuminate sustained diminutions in anxiety symptomatology, GAD-7 scores having on average, coupled with emergent mindfulness traits, as if new synaptic ensembles have etched pathways privileging equanimity over rumination, challenging the tenet that psychiatric interventions must batter the brain into submission rather than gently inviting its innate malleability. The critical inquiry persists. Do these rewirings endure as beneficial scaffolds, fortifying against life's erosions, or do they demand perpetual tending, like a garden ever threatened by neglect, with evidence tilting toward the former in adherent practitioners whose neural plasticity windows compound into a more adaptive cerebral physiognomy? In this rewired reality, the microdoser's narrative arc bends toward therapeutic horizons, where depression's gray veil lifts not through chemical numbing, but via perceptual revitalization, anxiety's grip loosens amid sensory reawakening, and creativity's fountain flows perennially from DMN's humbled throne. Thus the psilocybin paradox whispers of a mind unshackled, where microscopic grace begets macroscopic metamorphosis, inviting us to ponder the brain's boundless potential in the quiet laboratory of daily existence. As the contours of this neural odyssey settle into contemplative repose, the psilocybin paradox crystallizes not as an isolated curiosity, but as a luminous thread in the grander tapestry of consciousness exploration, where the brain's hidden symphonies, once confined to evolutionary imperatives, resonate with newfound fluidity under the gentle tutelage of microscopic measures, beckoning humanity toward a redefined epoch of mental flourishing. Envision the aggregate arc. From the initial serotonin to a whisper that desynchronizes the DMN's introspective hegemony, fostering cross-hemispheric dialogues among visual, somatosensory, and executive enclaves, to the ensuing neuroplastic bloom wherein BDNF cascades sculpt dendritic lattices in the hippocampus and prefrontal expanses, etching pathways of enhanced creativity, emotional poise, and perceptual acuity that linger like morning mist, yielding to dawn's persistent glow. Microdosers, in their intermittent communion with psilocin, report not mere symptomatic relief, depression's leaden cloak lifting by 20 to 25% across validated scales, but a holistic reattunement, where problem-solving transcends linear ruts into associative constellations. Sensory immersion deepens the mundane into the marvelous, and relational empathy flourishes amid amygdala-prefrontal harmonies, all substantiated by convergent lines of fMRI desynchronization, SPECT serotonin dynamics, and longitudinal mood trajectories that affirm the paradox's veracity. Profound reconfiguration from perceptual paucity. If you've made it this far, thank you for spending this time with me. A like, a share, or a quiet subscribe genuinely helps this channel reach the people who need calm science. This reconfiguration's sustainability, that pivotal enigma, unveils itself through the lens of compounded plasticity windows, where each sub-perceptual dose, 0.1 to 0.3 grams dried psilocybe cubensis, every 72 hours, reinforces synaptic proteome remodeling and hippocampal neurogenesis, potentially insulating against recidivist anxiety or depressive spirals in a manner akin to aerobic exercise's cumulative cerebral dividends, with adherent cohorts sustaining Big 5 openness elevations and mindfulness indices for upwards of 6 months post-regimen. Yet the paradox persists in its dual-edged grace. While preclinical fidelity and human observational vigor herald enduring benefits, fortified frontoparietal resilience, diminished rumination rigidity, gaps in RCTs compel caution, underscoring the imperative for phase Roman III rigor to delineate optimal protocols, demographic variances, and contraindications, lest unchecked enthusiasm eclipse the measured science that alone can shepherd this alchemy into therapeutic canon. In the ethical and legal dawning, as TGA approvals and FDA breakthroughs carve pathways from prohibition to prescription, the future unfurls as a call to collective discernment. To fund neuroimaging phenomenology hybrids, illuminating how DMN humility begets consciousness expansion, to integrate indigenous wisdom with molecular precision, and to envision mental health not as pathology's vanquishing, but as latent symphony's amplification. The Psilocybin Paradox, thus unpacked, murmurs a profound invitation. What if the mind's vast potential resides not in conquest, but in subtle surrender, where a grain of salt grace rewires reality's weave, unveiling perceptual playgrounds and neural novelties that redefine human flourishing in our accelerating age? In this quiet revolution, science and wonder entwine, guiding us through the brain's infinite folds toward horizons yet unimagined.